Hey guys, I'm Scott from Aristocob.com here. See, I don't say it like that. I don't say I'm. I have to do that over again.
What would you say? We'll listen.
Scott from Aristocob.com.
Oh, okay.
Hey guys, Scott from Aristocob.com here.
And Cal's dad? Cal's dad.
Are you Cal's dad?
Scott's dad. Start over.
Is there something happens when that red light comes on?
I didn't see the red one. I've seen the two blinking white ones.
Oh. Hey, Scott from Aristocob.com here.
And Cal from Denver here.
And Seth from all over the world.
And together, the four of us, we are Markwood Men's Breakfast Club. Now, my dad's thinking, four of us? That's one of the four.
I see.
That person who's watching. We'd mention his name, but, we don't want to single him out.
Or her.
The odds are no.
Yeah.
So we are at my house, and it's just after the first of the year, and we thought, since my dad is in town, that we would have him participate in an episode of Markwood Men's Breakfast Club. So we are not smoking our pipes because my dad doesn't smoke tobacco. Have you ever smoked tobacco?
No.
Ever? No, not at all.
No tobacco.
No. Oh, that's right. Dad's from Denver. So anyway, but one of the things that I was just talking to my dad about was I had such a great conversation with my dad and his brother, my Uncle Steve, this summer, and I wished that the camera had been rolling. I wish Seth had been there, and I thought that we would maybe. There's no way to bring that back, especially not without Uncle Steve here. But I would love to have parts of that conversation again, and what that conversation had to do with was my dad's dad and his woodworking business in Denver, and then a little bit about how you took a path away from that and got into your career in the Air Force. So if that is of interest to you, boy, that's what we've discussing
Cool.
today.
Yeah, sounds great.
So how did your dad wind up in Denver?
Well, his family lived out east of Denver on a farm. As he was growing up, grew up in a small town, Byers, Colorado, off I-70 today, and went part way into high school, and then he had to quit high school and go to work. And so around that time, they did move to Denver. He went to the Denver Opportunity School to get his high school degree or diploma, and was trained as an auto mechanic.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, surprise. There's other stuff you don't know about him.
So roughly what year, when was he born?
He was born in 1905.
Okay, so
My older brother and I always debate whether it was 05 or 06.
why do you debate
He's
that?
not here.
So it's 1905. Okay, I think I have a new tagline here. Here it is. In your face, Uncle Lewis.
Got it.
All right, so 1905. So then that would have put him, what, in 1920, 1922?
He would have been 20 to 22, 25, yeah.
Okay, and then was he an auto mechanic?
He finished his auto mechanics training, and my grandfather, who had a woodworking business, at that time it was primarily home remodeling and building cabinets and wood-framed storm windows, and he asked my dad if he would work with him for 1 year to get that business going in town, and after that year, then he could go back to the woodworking business. I mean, to the car repair business, and he never went back. About the end of World War II, so that would be 1945. My grandfather retired from that business and went out to the farm to heal some of his shattered nerves from working for housewives to remodel their houses, and my dad then took over the business.
And then the business changed, right? He wasn't doing carpentry work,
He
right?
quit doing that kind of work and went into what you'd call low grade production of primarily wood toys after World War II. He made a very cool anti-tank gun that was about 14, 16, 18 inches long and fired wooden pellets on a repeating magazine thing.
Tanks never saw it coming.
And he also built a Jeep that was a wood Jeep that would same size, same scale that you could tow the gun around with.
So we talking what size? What
No,
scale?
we're
Tonka truck.
Yeah, about.
Okay.
Yeah, about Tonka truck size, maybe a little bigger. We tested all of his prototypes. My older brother, who's 2 years older, and a younger brother who was 3 years younger. At that time, we had a lot of lead soldiers. We cast them ourselves, and we played with lead all the time, and none of us died from it.
Did you on it?
Does that break any of the myths?
Wait, so you mean like even when you were strapped in your car seat, you were playing with those lead toys?
No, this was on the kitchen floor at night when our mom was doing the laundry and stuff. Okay. And
What
so
were you melting it on, the stove?
No, we had a device that melted it. And,
The family
molds,
smelter?
and molds that you pour it. No, you kids got those along with chemistry sets in those days. Okay.
With real chemicals in it.
Yeah. And he made an atomic bomb sight, which was a little wooden block about probably 4 inches square, and had a slide on it. You could look down through a hole, and when you saw your target on the floor down below, which was the box the thing came in with a battleship printed on the top of it and a hole punched out, and then you would move a lever and it would drop a marble right through there. The hole
So
that
you're
you were
sighting through this block.
Yeah, yeah. And then he made a number of other things. He made a tumble toy, which was a ladder with clowns that tumbled down, and a doodle duck that Scott has the patent for, I believe.
Yeah.
That was a little duck that walked down a ramp, and a lot of those things. He did that probably 6 or 7 years. About the time I was finishing high school was when he got out of that business. That was when plastic toys were starting to come in.
Sure.
And,
Okay.
and then he went to building dairy porch boxes, very classy looking porch boxes, a lot sharper than the crude ones that they had before that.
All right. So for the 20-year-olds here, what is a dairy porch box?
Well, they still do. They still use them now. You'll see them on a few porches. Used to be that the dairies would have guys with trucks that drove around neighborhoods and delivered fresh milk to your front porch every day or every other day or whatever the frequency you wanted was. And these were initially rough, crude wooden boxes that box companies made with automatic nailing machines. Our dad came up with a way of making one with a smooth masonite side, and you could put a 1 or 2 or 3 color silkscreen logo for each dairy on it. And I spray painted those things through junior high, high school, and college. And earned my way to the ski slopes and to college. And
Now you said that he kind of owned that market in Denver, right?
He did.
And why is that?
He developed a way to paint the side of masonite. Masonite's a very absorbent material, and so he had to have a primer that would keep it from absorbing the paint, and then an enamel that would go on it that would take the silkscreen stencils, and it had to be capable of drying very quickly and not curtaining on the sides of them in order to make our production rate. We put out 200 of them every morning and afternoon, and he had his own formula of primer, which was an automotive primer that we cut with a different solvent than the auto industry used in order to make it soak in quickly and dry off.
Cat urine?
Yeah. And then we used a enamel that we cut with lacquer thinner to make it also dry and not curtain. And we had a few techniques to spray it on to get the coating that we needed and not have it run on us. And he swore his paint supplier to secrecy, that he would not reveal what paint he was buying to anybody, and it held him in a monopoly position probably for 15 years. When the big companies finally broke the formula and shut him down on that. By that time he was making other products. So
Wow.
and then we made other things during that same time period in addition to the porch boxes.
So there's also an interesting story. I'm assuming you can tell the story about Calvin.
Keep going.
Well, the gentleman who worked for Grandpa.
Oh yeah.
Are you allowed to tell that story?
Yeah.
Is the statute of limitations
Yeah. I think
gone on that one?
Yes. One of my dad's great skills, and one that I think he passed on to me to a certain extent, was the ability to build tools that made it possible for people with no training to turn out quality woodwork. And they would be jigs and clamps and things that he would put on drill presses or saws or shapers, so that, like I say, an unskilled person could run a board through it and get out the product that they needed. One of those unskilled people was a blind fellow named Calvin, which happens to be my name, and he worked there for 4 or 5 years. My grandfather also came back and worked for my dad during that same time period, and he and Cal used to heckle each other to death.
Now, what's your grandfather's name?
He was Lewis.
And then what's your dad's name?
Calvin.
Wait a second.
Actually,
Can we back up a second?
my brother was also Lewis, but there were differences. Grandpa Lewis was L-O-U-I-S, middle
Okay.
name Archibald, and brother Lewis was L-E-W-I-S, middle name Ardra. And there's a story behind that, but we won't go
Okay.
into that one. So Grandpa Lewis, L-O-U-I-S, came into town and lived with us and worked at the shop also. And one of the things that we were making was an artist's palette. This was a piece of masonite contoured to look like what an artist would put their paint on, and it had to have a thumb hole in it to hold onto it with, so that you could hold it with one hand, keep it level, and paint.
So this is like Bob Ross. If you guys have seen Bob Ross, is a big. He has a big afro, and he paints. Used to paint on PBS.
Yeah.
Big palette in your hand that
with
you mix.
many colors, and you can
Right.
mix, yeah. So to make that hole, we would bore a hole through it that was circular, and then on the drill press we'd put a circular sanding drum
Okay.
that was about probably an inch or inch and a half in diameter, and you'd run the board up on that and then gradually tilt it till you got about a 45-degree bevel on it. Well, this would make the masonite surface really hot while you're doing it. And every once in a while, my granddad would hand his over to Cal and say, "Check that and see how it feels." And you could almost hear it sizzle. And on alternate days, Cal would give one to Grandpa to test. Neither one of them ever got smart.
They never caught on to that, huh?
The other thing, Cal was good at priming these porch boxes, because we'd have about a 4 or 5 inch deep metal pan with the primer in it, and you just put the box in and roll it over and make sure inside and outside got coated, and then set it on a rack to drain for a little bit, and then stack them in a stack. Well, Cal would get stacks as high as his head built up, and Grandpa would come in and very quietly move those around until he had him trapped.
Completely enclosed, right?
Yeah.
So then you did this. You worked at Grandpa's shop through college, and then what did you do?
Yeah, I worked at Grandpa's shop up to about end of grade school.
Okay.
And what I did there...
Well, that's what I call Grandpa's shop.
Oh,
It's
your
dad's,
grandpa.
Your dad's
yeah,
shop.
Yeah. My brother and I cleaned out sawdust from the shop when we were little kids. And then about the time I went into junior high, we started working after school and Saturdays and summers down there full time. And I did that all the way through high school and college.
And then
I left home.
escaped, right?
And then I escaped, yeah.
Now I remember as a kid, every now and then you would need to build something, and we would go out to the hobby shop at whatever Air Force base you were stationed at, and sometimes I wasn't allowed to go in. It all depends upon the rules of the age and everything. So there were times I'm looking through the windows, but I remember you going in there and making jigs and fixtures and things so you could produce the thing you were producing and be done. All I wanted to do was to hang out in the shop, and all you wanted to do was to get done.
Get out.
And I never understood that. So maybe you can address that, because I think maybe you already did. I think your experience in the shop, did it take is woodworking work for you? Is that the deal?
Yeah, woodworking, like you would expect a skilled woodworker to do, is not one of my gifts. I could do all the things that I needed to do there at the shop, but I've never really wanted to just make things out of wood. I have made a lot of things, of course. Most husbands, fathers do, but that wasn't something that I really loved to do.
So then what did you love to do? Or what did you think you loved to do?
Well, I grew up during World War II as a kid, and we lived near Lowry Air Force Base and during that time period, and lots of airplanes, military airplanes, came and went, and they had a lot of air shows. About every 6 months, the military would put on an air show out there. And my brothers and I kind of ate, drank, and slept cars and airplanes. Knew every airplane that the world had at that time, and could identify them by sight and sound almost. And I always knew that I wanted to fly, and that kind of shut off the other avenues, I guess. I also then went on to college and got a 4-year engineering education that was different. To be a good carpenter, you don't need an engineering education.
Yeah.
And I don't care what the politicians say now. There's a lot of good jobs out there that you don't need 4 years of college for. And when you've got 4 years of college, then you can do other
jobs. So you're not against higher education, right?
Not at all.
Yeah.
No, but not everybody needs it.
Yeah. Do they need the debt, though? Isn't that important? Doesn't that encourage them in some way?
It's really getting political. we could go a long ways with this here.
All right, so you got done with school, and were you in ROTC?
Yes. I started college in 1952, which was right in the heat of the Korean War. And when a boy graduated from high school in that year, you either went in the military or you went to college and got a deferment, or you were physically not qualified. So most of my high school classmates went almost immediately into the military. I went to college and got into the Air Force ROTC. At that time, at the University of Colorado, all engineering students had to go into the Army ROTC because they had a Corps of Engineers sponsorship there. And so I got there and I went to the Army guys and I said, what do I have to, I said, I've always wanted to be a pilot. What do I have to do to get into the Air Force ROTC? And they said, go over and get them to accept you. So I did, and that took care of it. So.
Okay. So then after college, did you do okay in school?
I did okay in school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I passed.
Nothing else you want to add to that, huh? Where did you go to school?
Well, I don't want to brag.
Where did you go to school?
University of Colorado.
If I found your yearbook from that year, would I find you in the front, or where would I find you?
Under M. Yeah. I was not famous in a college of 17,000 people.
You weren't voted
no, engineers.
most likely to succeed or something?
No, they didn't do that for the engineers.
Engineers, no sense of humor.
Yeah. No, I was commissioned second lieutenant in the Air Force, same day I graduated from college. And then I was given a pilot training assignment about 7 months from that, January, February of the next year. So I interviewed with the companies that were there looking for new grads to hire, and I went to work for Lockheed Aircraft out in California for what was supposed to be 7 months, and then my pilot training date got extended another 5 months, and so I managed to hang on there and work for almost a full year.
Where did you say you were in California?
Van Nuys, California.
Yeah, you didn't say that. Okay.
No, I didn't say that. It was a missile systems division in Van Nuys. The airplane company was in Burbank, and they had other subsidiaries around. But this was a fairly new group that were building flying machines. I worked on one called the X-7, which was a test bed for a ramjet engine that was used on a Beaumark interceptor missile. And
in case you need to intercept a Beaumont.
To intersect bombers. It never got into full service.
So surface to air was the
surface
idea?
launched, rocket launched, and it got up to very high speed, and a ramjet engine took over. And at that time, it was the only machine that could go 3 times the speed of sound. Wow. And they had a new version just when I was finishing up my year that was a bigger engine and would drive it to 4 times the speed of sound. So it was a flying machine.
So then the Air Force says, all right, come on down. And that was to where?
I went to San Antonio, Lackland Air Force Base for 6 weeks of pre-flight training, and that was mostly getting all the paperwork straightened out, and the records stuff, and some PT, and a little bit of leadership stuff with the enlisted recruits that were down there, and eating a lot of steak. Because one thing San Antonio had was a lot of good steakhouses at that time. And then I went to Bartow, Florida, which is southwest of Orlando, which most people know the most about. There's a place there called Cypress Gardens that was famous for their water shows, where you have a couple of speedboats pulling water skiers and they stack up in pyramids and things like that. That was right near the base that I was stationed at there. 6 months, flew the T-34 initially, and then the T-28, which was a bigger, much more fun airplane.
At that point, did you have an idea what the Air Force was training you for? Was it just
Yeah.
teach you to fly, or
Well,
did they have a plan for you?
No, that base was to teach you to fly, and the T-34 was just basic flying. The T-28, we got into instrument training, navigation, and so forth, in addition to just airplane flying. A lot of acrobatics and no formation at that time. From there, I went to Laredo Air Force Base in Laredo, Texas, and went into the T-33, which was a jet trainer, and then that was everything. That was instruments and navigation and basic flying, acrobatics, and the whole works. At the end of that time, I got my wings and was considered a pilot, but not capable of doing anything useful. And I went from there to Perrin Air Force Base for interceptor training, combat crew training, they called it. And I flew the F-86L, which was an interceptor airplane designed to go up and shoot down Russian bombers if they ever came here. So, and it was during that time then that I married the only thing that I liked in Texas, and that was Scott's mother.
So you found it and removed.
Married her and took her out. Yeah.
Yeah, you had a lot of nice things to say about Laredo as I was a kid. I think I remember you talking about if Texas needed an enema.
Yeah. the armpit of the nation. Yeah.
I've visited Laredo a couple times for business, and I never understood what you meant by that. I do now. Laredo's a truck stop.
It is now, much more
is.
so now. Yeah. They had one bridge coming across from Mexico when I was there for pilot training, and they have 5 or 6 now. And it's an international shipping point, some of it legal and some of it not so legal.
So we're now not welcome in 2 cities.
Laredo and Roanoke.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Roanoke's probably a lot safer.
Yeah, probably
Maybe.
so. Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. So you met Mom. You got married. How'd you meet Mom?
I was going to a Methodist church with some of my fellow pilot trainees, and we got acquainted with a couple, a married couple there that would invite us home for Sunday dinner, and we had 4 or 5 nice Sunday dinners. The one on Easter Sunday, their daughter had come home from college, and so I was chatting with her, and she said, well, did you grow up Methodist? And I said, no, I'm a Baptist. And she says, Baptist? Well, my best girlfriend in high school goes to the Baptist church here. So I went that night and saw her and checked it off. That's who I'm going to marry.
Why, yes. I will take this one.
Now, this is in a town with relatively few eligible females and thousands of pilot trainees, so it was a little bit of a competition.
Was there? So
I won.
was Mom? Was she playing the field? Did she have other suitors?
Oh yeah, sure. She had one Sunday afternoon. She had me scheduled there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and as I pulled up, there was a car still parked out in front, and so I just stopped and walked up to the door, and the door opened, and another young Air Force guy walked out and says, "Next."
Wow.
But we narrowed them down. We had a couple of months to get serious about it.
That's funny. So then, did you weren't in Laredo long then, right?
No, I was up in northern Texas at Perrin Air Force Base in the F-86 training at that time, and we got married just after Thanksgiving in 1958. She came up to Perrin for our first couple of months before we moved on to California.
Okay, and then that was where?
That was Oxnard Air Force Base, was near Camarillo,
Because
California.
are any of these Air Force bases you mentioned still in business?
No. Lackland is,
Yeah.
but no, the others are closed. Laredo Air Force Base is now Laredo International Airport, and strictly private flying and commercial. And Oxnard Air Force Base, I don't know what its name is now, but it's a private flying field now. Corporate planes.
Is that because the planes, the Air Force planes, have gotten bigger, more powerful, or what? What was the? Oh, we're going to get political again.
No, fewer. There are fewer of them, and they've done a lot of consolidation.
Yeah.
You know, the Russian bomber threat gradually diminished, so the need to have bases every few hundred miles around the border of the country dropped off. That mission went. You know, at that time we had Air Defense Command, which had this mission of protecting us from attacking Russians, and then we had the Tactical Air Command, which was the fighters that would go other places to fight wars. And TAC has taken over the air defense mission as much as you need. You know, all we have is an occasional Russian airplane that'll fly too close to the coast on the east coast, and they'll go up and intercept them and fly alongside and take pictures and so we went to Oxnard Air Force Base. I went into the F-89, which is another interceptor airplane. Not nearly as much fun to fly as the F-86 was, but potentially far more effective. We carried 2 nuclear rockets on it with 2 kiloton warheads. We actually didn't fly with them. We set alert with those and would go up and practice without them. And then after about a year, we turned those in and got F-101s, F-101B, which is an interceptor version of the Voodoo, and it could carry 2 nukes on one side of a door and 2 infrared missiles on the other side of the door. The door would rotate depending on what weapon you'd selected.
Don't wanna get the side of the door wrong. Huh?
That's right.
Yeah.
You release the ones that are inside. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I would imagine there's a safety.
There were
Maybe
lots.
there's like a dashboard light or something.
There were lots of safeties. Yeah, lots of safeties. Most of which I'd have to shoot you if I told you about them.
All right. So, and now, from there, is that where Jerry came from?
Yeah, Jerry was born there. Our
My oldest sister.
daughter. Yeah, his oldest sister, my oldest daughter, was born while we were there. We were there till 61 to 63. No, I'm sorry, that's not right. 59 to 61.
Right.
And then we left there and I went to graduate school back in Dayton, Ohio. And while we were there, our second daughter, Lisa, was born, and our first son, Scott, was born in Dayton. And that starts the whole Dayton connection.
Right. So I was born in '63, and like immediately after you guys left again.
Yes.
And I think I was around 3 when I caught up with you guys.
The story about Scott's birth is that I was just finishing up graduate school. I was working on my thesis, and it was not coming out well. There was a portion of the work that was out of my hands and in the hands of a guy who wasn't succeeding, and I was going to take the blows for his lack of success. So I was really struggling to get that to work. And came time for Scott to be born, I took his mom to the hospital about 7 in the morning, dropped her off, went to class. About noon when I got out of class, I went back to the hospital and saw Scott, and then went back to continue my homework. So I noticed he was there, but that's about it.
Do you need more coffee?
And then 2 weeks later, we were leaving there on our way back to California.
Is that a yes or a no? Oh, coffee?
No, thank you.
Okay. So then, California,
Yeah,
that was Torrance?
That time we went to Torrance, which is a suburb of greater Los Angeles.
And what were you doing there?
And by the way, his second sister was born while we were there too. We had
In Dayton?
No, yes, in Dayton. We had 16 guys in my class in graduate school. We were there for 2 years, and there were 17 babies born.
Oh my God. But you had 2 of them, so.
Yeah, the story was that the only time we got to see our wives was when we went to bed.
Wow. So then you were in Torrance. What were you doing there?
We went to Torrance. I was assigned to the Air Force's first weather satellite program. It was a very highly classified program because NASA had the weather satellite mission, and they were failing badly at it. And the Air Force desperately needed a weather satellite to get current weather in a number of important parts of the world. And so our office worked with the contractor to simplify the satellite they were building for NASA and make one that would work. And we were also then launching it kind of on a bootstraps program. They were taking old Thor missiles that had been on station, I believe, in Turkey and Italy and some of the other eastern side of Western Europe countries, 1,500-mile intercontinental, not intercontinental, 1,500-mile medium-range ballistic missiles, bringing them back to the States, and we pulled them out of the warehouse, had them refurbished and a few pieces added to make a satellite launcher out of them. And I got to work that side of the program while other guys were working the satellite itself, which was really a clever, novel piece of equipment for those days. This satellite was about this big around and weighed 120 pounds. You know, they launch them now, they're as big as a locomotive and are extremely complicated. But it worked, and it was a great program to be on, very rewarding. Jump ahead a little bit. From there I went into training for the 105 for that mission in Vietnam. And when I got over to Vietnam, we were getting real-time weather over North Vietnam as we were flying up to launch a mission, and we could tell whether there was going to be fog in the valley where our targets were or not, and either go there or turn around. Well, I was the only one there that knew where we were getting.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you weren't able to talk about it still?
Not really. Yeah. What we had done was we had one of our ground stations at the contractor's building that we had used as a prototype for the ground equipment we needed to get the information out of the satellites as they flew over. And we refurbished it, put it on a ship and sent it to South Vietnam. And then we took a satellite that had been a vibration test structure and was sitting on a shelf in a warehouse, pulled it out and put a minimum amount of equipment on it. The basic satellite had to record the weather data over different countries, and when we got over the U.S., they would then downlink it to ground stations, and this one would downlink it directly to Saigon. So we didn't need the recorders and didn't need a lot of the other equipment, and so we were able to get it up there really fast. Took about 6 months, I think, from when it got approved till we had the data in operation over there. So I knew about that, and and it was kind of fun to know.
So then we talked about some of your missions you were flying. The last time we got you on tape here. You were in Vietnam or in Thailand for how long?
Just about a year, just short of a year.
And you were flying missions into northern Vietnam?
Into North Vietnam.
To North Vietnam.
Yeah, out of Thailand.
You know, we were talking about some of the frustration now that folks are having with some of the drone attacks that we're doing in certain parts of the world, and how maybe I just asked you to tell us that. You said that you're aware there are folks that are saying that they're seeing a target of opportunity, and they can't shoot at it. Is that right?
Without
today. This is today.
Yeah.
And without what?
Without Washington approval.
So they got to run it all the way up to somebody who
from a very high level. Yes.
So you see a fuel tanker that's on its way.
They see.
ISIS is about to get some cash from somebody.
Yeah.
And we can't shoot at it.
Can't do anything unless, like I say, unless it's approved from the very highest level.
So then let's go back to Vietnam. What was it like in Vietnam?
Same deal. Actually, our targets were very specifically picked out and assigned, and we had almost the only free, we called it armed reconnaissance. Okay, the only free shooting that we would have was along one highway called Route 5 that went from Laos into North Vietnam. They would bring equipment, supplies and such out of Vietnam into Laos and down on the west side of the mountain range that borders North Vietnam, and then they would turn into this highway that would then go out closer to the coast and down some of their coastal highways. And that was the only place that we could go and look for a target. Now, this was well known by the time I got over there, so there were never, ever any targets visible on Route 5. So, and we figured that they would travel at night when we weren't up and about.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not getting political.
Yeah.
To me, it's just frustrating when we've got, you know, a well-armed and skilled military that we tie their hands.
Yeah.
You know, so we're going to complete a mission or not.
You know, there's a degree of control that's essential.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we weren't over there to destroy all of Vietnam. We were over there to stop the war.
Right.
And that's a little different. So you need a degree of control, but you also need a degree of freedom. Shut that one off.
Yeah, mine is set for stun. How about yours?
That's the one that we were picking that you that you put on Facebook the other day.
Yes. Dad was thrilled that I shared on Facebook him listening through the various ringtones on his cell phone.
Anyway,
Can't help myself.
the one thing that I have always been kind of pleased with myself about was I was leading a flight of 4 down Route 5 one afternoon, and we had dropped our bombs. We still had the cannons with full load of 20 millimeter ammunition. Pause. Can you cut that out of the video?
Nope.
I could, but probably not gonna.
Hello. We're being videotaped right now. You're on the air.
Now it's the
Is
five
it,
of
is
us.
it urgent? Okay. Bye.
That's how you know this is
Sorry
real
about
life.
that. Anyway, as I flew along looking down at the road and not seeing anything, I asked myself, if I were a truck driver down there and the sun came up, where would I hide? And I could see a place where the road was going along kind of a shelf road, and it hit a place where the mountain range made about a 90-degree turn, and they had to turn the road. And I said, you know, the slope is a lot shallower in that, right at that turn, than it is any place else along there. So I swung around and rolled in and fired about 700 rounds of 20 millimeter ammunition from high altitude, so that it probably spread out as big as a football field above and below that turn point. As I pulled off, one of the other guys in the flight behind me said, "Jesus, look at that smoke." And I turned around and looked, and this black smoke was just boiling out of there. And when I got back, he asked me, "How did you see that stuff down there?" And I said, "With my brain." So
He's the force.
that worked. Yeah, use the
Yes,
force.
It is using the force.
Yeah.
Wow. So despite the phone call interruption, we're probably running long for this video. I don't know. I can't see the timer on the camera.
Probably.
So maybe we should make this a 2-parter.
Okay. We can do that.
Well, I mean,
And then cut out the phone call.
no,
No,
we'll
no,
put
it's-
that at the end of this one and the beginning of next week's episode.
Yeah, we don't edit.
No.
No.
So
Okay.
let's wrap this one up. So, guys, cliffhanger. A little bit more with my dad next week, and we appreciate your time. Make it a great week.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.